It's often exciting to look to the future of UNO, what it might be like in times to come. Sometimes, though, it's important to stop and take a good look at the past of the university, the people and the happenings that help make the excitement of future history possible. With this in mind, join me for Reflections in Time.
John Lucas, the first dean of the College of Business Administration at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, has been an integral part in the building of the business program here ever since he first arrived in 1938. He came to the University of Omaha as a professor of business administration. After 4 years, he became dean of students, continuing as department head and teaching business courses too. He then took the post of the dean of the College of Business Administration when it was begun here in 1952. A few years later, in 1965, under Dean Lucas's direction, the college received national recognition when it became a member of the American Association of Collegiate Schools of Business. Dean Lucas came here by way of Ohio State University, where he received his Bachelor of Science degree in 1929, and where he also worked for the Ohio Bell telephone system for about 4 years when he joined the OSU faculty. Then in 1935, he received his MBA there while he was also working on his PhD program. The degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, was conferred on Dean Lucas in 1969. He was cited as an outstanding teacher, counselor, and administrator, a continuing inspiration to his students and his faculty, and I might add to his friends. And I'm glad you came today, John, so we could visit.
Thank you very much, Paul. I had my first contact with the University of Omaha when Roland Haynes came to the campus at Ohio State.
I was wondering how you first came.
And was looking for some people in business administration. We had quite a long visit. I wasn't really too much interested until we had some follow-up letters and one thing and another.
Had you ever heard of the place?
Well, I'd known about Omaha. We'd gone through here on our way to Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
And what we enjoyed about Omaha was the wonderful trees coming out Dodge Street.
Yeah,
remember?
I remember them.
So we had some contact with Omaha, and we knew it was quite a piece out west. But Roland Haynes, after consultation back here, he finally wrote me a letter and invited me to come out. And we got together by correspondence, and I agreed to come. I was kind of anxious to, because I was ready for some new experiences, don't you know? And the way he explained the situation here was pretty good. He showed me the picture of the new building.
Yes, and it was brand new then, wasn't it? It was
brand new. So when we arrived and took a look at it, it was a beautiful Georgian building standing on a pile of dirt, really, because there was no grass, no trees, nothing of that sort, don't you know.
It was just completed.
Just completed. Well, as a matter of fact, they had summer school here that summer, but the building wasn't complete, as all buildings usually aren't, even at dedication time. But that fall, we had a little bad weather, and during dedication, some of the guests had to be pulled out of the mud by the
They were literally stuck.
Tractor, yeah, you bet. But you know, once you got inside of the building, it was a beautiful building and still is.
Indeed it is.
But it's been remodeled so much.
Yes.
It took away a lot of the inside charm.
What was it like before it began being remodeled in a general way, John?
Well, I tell you, in the first place, everybody had a private office.
Ah.
And everybody had all the classroom space he needed.
Probably right near his office, right?
Wasn't too far away.
Yeah.
Across the hall. And we enjoyed very much a lot of space, but it soon began to fill up. But you know, the building housed everything. The library was here, the bookstore was here, and believe it or not, we had locker rooms for students, and we had lounges for students, male and female. We kept them separate in those days, you know, different now. But it was nice, and it was convenient. We had a cafeteria here, which was very lovely. But we separated the faculty from the students, and the faculty had a faculty lounge, club room, dining room, used for everything. It's the room on the lower floor at the east end of the building that has the fireplace in it.
Yes. And in 1979, when we record this, it now relates to the Home Economics College, I believe.
That's right. And then Home Economics took it over. But the thing that I noticed about this university, coming from a school of some 12 or 13,000, which was large in those days,
very big, yeah,
that you didn't have any trouble getting acquainted with the people with whom you were going to work. There were no strong divisions, at least they didn't seem to me, between the people who were teaching the humanities or the social sciences or mathematics or the physical sciences or engineering and business administration, economics, all that. Part of the reason, I suppose, was that we were all in one college.
I was going to ask you about the college structure in 1938.
This was amazing to me after coming from the university with a multitudinous number of colleges. And by definition, a university is a collection of colleges, you know. So I wondered, and I began to ask them questions and see what the score was. But I soon found out that they had plans to separate off certain departments into the College of Applied Arts. Now, Edgar Holt was dean of the college, and Carl Helmstadter was associate dean.
Edgar Holt?
Yes.
Yes.
And Carl handled the areas, of business administration, the engineering, technical things, home economics, journalism. Those were some of the areas that he looked after. In addition, he was registrar.
Was this considered sort of a division within the college?
No,
then?
it was still part of the college.
Yeah.
It was all one college, but he sort of looked after that, that area. Getting ready for the division, which came about 1941, they had the physical facilities all set up with new dean's offices for the college dean of applied arts.
Yes.
So then they split and became College of Applied Arts. And those areas of business and home ec, and journalism, so on, were transferred then to the College of Applied Arts, and Dr. Helmstadter took over. We were separate and distinct. The Department of Economics, which we were always very much interested in, because a core in our program in business is always economics,
yes,
remained in liberal arts. But it pleased me a great deal because we had no trouble getting along with those folks. I mean, they were very cooperative. You know, Paul, when you know people and you understand them and how they think, it eliminates a lot of arguments. You don't have any trouble.
Was size one of the factors that really helped? We weren't very big then?
Well, I think that... you mean to have one college?
I meant just in terms of the relationships of people. You were able to know everybody quite well because we weren't so big in terms of students or
we had
faculty.
faculty parties, we had Christmas parties,
I remember those
parties.
in the 50s.
You remember those, we still had them then. And the deans of the colleges would entertain the faculties and so forth.
In their
that was always a lot of fun. And you got to meet everybody. And when we had one college, you all went to the same faculty meeting, you see. And you'd get some differences of opinion, but it worked all right. I sort of got interested, and I used to ask Carl, because Carl came here, Helmstadter came here in 1929 and was at the other school. And I discovered from him that there was a College of Commerce downtown.
Is that right?
Yeah, and he was in charge of it. He was there. Mrs. Sinnett was there, I think, and
Gloria
I don't know anybody, how many else. But I came across a picture one time of a three-storied building that was sort of narrow. It wasn't a very good picture, but at the top of the first floor, or the second floor, between the second and third floor, it said University of Omaha Downtown Departments.
Downtown Department?
Yes. And then above the first floor, it said College of Commerce, Knight Law School.
Knight Law School, same building, same place?
Yeah.
Does that building, by any chance, do you think still exists?
I don't know. I was never quite sure of the location. I thought it was down on Farnham Street.
Do you, by any chance, have that picture, John?
No, I don't have it, but I think the journalism department does.
Well, if we can find it, we'll take and insert it in this tape we're making right now and let people see it. I think that's tremendously interesting.
I know where you can find a facsimile.
All right. We'll pursue that.
That's in the, I think maybe it's the 1950 issue of the Tomahawk.
All right.
That was a centennial
We will take a look, and if we find it, people can be looking at that while we are now talking about it.
It's an interesting thing.
Well, now, that college, or that college, those schools of law and commerce, those were a part of this university when it was still not where we are. Yeah,
still
when it was
private school. See, it hadn't become municipal yet.
Hadn't by vote become a part of the city.
And I asked Carl when that municipal school really started to give business courses, because this wasn't too ordinary in colleges, but in university level. And in about 1925, 26, they began giving courses.
Is that right?
And he came in 29, and he was head then of the College of Commerce downtown. Then I think when the university became municipal in 1931, after the citizens of Omaha made a wise decision, because this university has given more people opportunities to add on to their high school education than would have ever been possible if the university wasn't here.
Indeed so.
Because we had just a great number of students, Paul, who would not have taken the risk to get on a train and go to Lincoln, because that's the way you'd have to go and get started. A risk on college. Because, you know, out of high school, there are students with all degrees of aptitude and interest as measured by grades or however you want to measure them. But there are also some who aren't quite up to the top, who have some pretty good minds if they have a chance to develop them.
Indeed so.
So we had a great number of students like that. And we had a great number of students who worked a great deal, which made it possible for them to work part-time, go to school in the daytime. Another aspect of the operation here, these are things that pleased me when I was here.
Yes.
Was the evening program, because we were operating like a true municipal institution, and they had been even before they became municipal, of taking care of the adult who needed extra education, who may have graduated from high school and might not have graduated from high school.
Are you saying that back in the 20s, before they ever came out here, we were having some adult courses?
I don't know how far back,
yeah,
but they had them.
Is that really not
I don't know how
tremendous?
far back. But when we came out here, it just bloomed, don't you
Yes,
see?
yes.
Just bloomed quite a lot. So that the change to a municipal university was a great thing. And I know, not firsthand, but from what conversations I had with the people who were here then, how hard the faculty and students worked to show the citizens of Omaha how much to their benefit would be for that investment. And I didn't quite know how they did it all on less than 1 mil. They were allowed to levy up to 1 mil, but they only took part of it. But after we were on this campus, there was more need, and they began taking the full mill. So those early days were very important days, because that period while they were from, let's say, 31 to 38. Now, I get this by hearsay, talking to my good friend Carl Hempstead, and talking to some other people, like who were here, and for whom I had a tremendous respect and couldn't, I always wasn't sure how they were able, with their limited resources, to attract such talent. I'm talking about people like the late Jim Earle in mathematics, marvelous mathematician.
Right.
Wilford Payne,
Oh, yeah.
a wonderful philosopher, don't you see?
Yes.
Sullinger, Garlow, Nell Ward, Gertrude Kincaid.
Great names.
All those people I can
Educator.
remember from way back then, I can't remember from yesterday. You know,
the people you mentioned there are familiar names to so many people who are probably watching this tape. in the alumni office or here at our university library in years to come. But you mentioned, and it piques my interest too, how did any or all of those people end up here? Do you know in a general way how we acquired with limited funds and a relatively young school? Why did they come here?
I tell you, finding jobs in that period was not quite so easy.
We're talking about the Depression, post-Depression period there, right?
31,
Yeah.
35,
Right.
that period there was not so easy to find, particularly in those strong liberal arts fields, because people like the ones I just mentioned, there were a good many of them across the country, and jobs were a little difficult to find. But they helped to develop a stature for this institution that I appreciated, and I enjoyed, and I learned a great deal from them. When I became a department head after a couple of years or so, the head of the Department of Business Administration, under the aegis of the College of Applied Arts with Helmstadter as dean, I was assigned to a committee which I wondered about because I wasn't too expertise in building programs and putting strings on faculty for what they could do, what they couldn't do with courses. But I got on the faculty committee for curriculum. Well, we're still one college too, and then afterwards. And Jim Morrow was chairman. I learned a great deal on how to do that sort of thing. You learn a lot if you want to. I got interested in administration, being in as a department head, and I got so that I enjoyed it quite a bit. So that's, I suppose, why I got to staying in it a little bit.
That business college, rather the Department of Business that you came and were a part of as you and your good wife came and family here in '38. What was it? Was it a few courses, a couple of teachers? How big was it at that time?
It wasn't very big, and there wasn't very many, because when President Haynes talked to me, he says, "Can you teach this and this and this and this and this and this?" And well, Paul, I had certain specialties, and the strongest field was accounting. Now, that's because Helmstadter was an accountant, and he had his doctorate in accounting. And that was a strong field. And we wanted to develop the area of marketing and management and business law, these other areas. Now, there was a Department of Secretarial Science. I mean, and
you had that at that time?
Yes, yes. And Paul, there was something about the program that I noticed that it was tailored to fit the needs of students and to encourage them to go ahead. Instead of a student coming and just taking a smattering of courses, he'd take a pattern of courses, and at the end of 2 years, he could have himself a certificate or a title in accounting or business administration or in secretarial practices. What did it mean? Well, he was taking courses, many of them that are normally in the other program, but he had a stopping place. But he had a block to build on.
Yes.
Encouraged him. And also, if he was going to quit and go to work, he had a package. You know, there's a slogan over there in the building someplace, a plaque up on the wall, which gave the philosophy of the institution pretty much, at least to my knowledge. That what we tried to do was to have people learn to make a living and learn how to live as one process, not two.
Yes.
So if you're going to do that, you need something to provide welfare for yourself in the economy, but you also need to be able to appreciate the good things in the economy and enjoy them. And that was a philosophy that seemed to, I never knew who picked it, put up there. I had a suspicion maybe Dr. Haynes did, but I don't know for sure, because he was that kind of a man.
Yeah.
He was a real fine fellow.
Describe him a little bit,
well,
from your memory.
He was sort of quiet. He wasn't a blustery sort of a person. He was patient. He was helpful. He was a good counselor. There was one period during his administration, I don't have the years in mind, but I was having a little rough time. Problems, you know. He called me on one day and handed me a book by Giltner, who was a minister of a Congregational church in Massachusetts. And he said, here's a book. And he inscribed in it, he says, here's a book that helped me a little bit when things were rough and might help you. And the title of the book was When Life Gets Hard. It was written after the war and based on a lot of problems that people had through the war. Because we had problems during the war. I don't mean problems that you couldn't handle, that you just had to get with it, that's all. I remember the biggest class I had was about 288 students. We combined things because some of our men went to war.
Yes, we're talking now about World War II.
Yeah, some of them went to the bomber plants, and
the one probably right at the edge of town here.
oh
right?
yeah, Martin Bomber.
Yes.
And a lot of those technical courses that were developed by the university to train people. I saw some, I can't verify it, but somewhere around 5,000 to 6,000 persons were helped by various aspects of the university to work in the bomber plant. I remember one time, Helmstadter handled all this because it was technical in his engineering area.
Yes.
Going to a demonstration where a man was demonstrating to a lot of women who might like to work in the bomber plant how to do some welding to see if they might be interested in taking a course in welding. And some of them did, quite a lot of them. Are you young enough to remember that song?
Rosie the Riveter?
Rosie the Riveter?
It came to mind as you were mentioning that.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
But you know, you mentioned the 2-year program where after 2 years a young boy or girl could get a type of certificate to indicate where they were at, and they'd had a core of courses.
Associate title.
Yeah. In your memory in those early years when you were a relatively small department, before you became a college in the 50s, and in that period there, late 30s, early 40s, did most of the students go a year or two and then go off somewhere else or go to work, or did a good share of them get a degree, as we call it today?
No. We did then, as I suspect many they do now, a lot of transfer and service. I mean, somebody who wants to take a few courses, or somebody who wants to I'm not sure they have those 2-year programs anymore. I think
there are some of them, yes.
Are there still some? They might have phased out. But they sort of phased out of the School of Business. And, but the reason for their program, it kind of dovetailed with the junior colleges of the country.
Oh, yes.
And Helmstadter at the time was interested in the junior college movement and used to go to some of their meetings. And of course, this is where we got some of the ideas. But it helped a student to get a block on which to build further, because there was usually not much in that program he couldn't use towards a degree.
Yeah.
It worked out very well.
When you began in the 50s, when we finally became a college and moved out of the departmental status.
At about 52.
Yeah, 52. Did that come, in your memory, as a decision completely within the university, or was there a demand for expanding and adding programs and making it that kind of a level? Where were we at totally then?
We were moving along pretty well with enrollment. Now, you see, one big shock everybody got when they moved to this building in '38. The enrollment about doubled.
Just like that almost,
Just like that. And they were all lower division students.
Doubled, that's tremendous.
So we were moving right along and adding more faculty as we could get them. And before we became a college, we became a division in the College of Applied Arts, which is a step up, which permitted then to break the Department of Business Administration down into the significant areas like accounting, real estate, insurance, business administration.
You didn't call them departments, or you called them units, or how did you refer to them?
We called them departments in the division.
Division of departments.
Division of Business Administration in the College of Applied Arts. Remember, I was Dean of Students at that time.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
And when you have that many jobs to fit in, now everybody worked hard. It wasn't just me. I mean, with a lot of different things. But we liked it. What I wanted to do, now these weren't big departments. They were the nucleus of what was to become when we got to be a full-fledged college. So there might not be, and some people would be critical that the departments weren't big enough, which is true enough. But you put Glenn Lewis in charge of real estate. All right. What was it we wanted to do? We wanted to give the students a feeling of belonging to something, a feeling of the business people in that area, real estate, a feeling that we were doing something for people who would become in real estate. And we did wonderful cooperation from the Omaha Realtors, from the Nebraska Real Estate Association. We had scholarships. And there are a lot of realtors today who went through that program in Omaha, because then we did the same with the county. And we did the same with, well, in marketing, it wasn't until about the time Dr. Bale came that we got the degree in retailing.
Dr. Bale came about 10 years after you did, didn't he?
About 1948.
Yes.
He helped to set up the Bachelor of Science degree in retailing, and Herf Davison came to run the program. And that was an effort to take people in the field of marketing who had a feeling for retailing, to get a little more specialization, and also to get some practical experience during their junior and senior year. During the junior and senior year, they'd work about 20 hours for a retailer, with a close relationship between Herf Davison and the man at the retail establishment who was in charge of that student. Now, the boy or girl got paid for doing the work. He got credit for the reports he had to write and the meetings he had with Davison.
Things we'd call today probably work-study programs.
I was going to use that word because I wanted to mention work-study. When Roland Haynes, well, I'm not sure how long he had the idea, but when I came, he had underway a work-study program, and he had Jack Woods, whom he brought in to handle it. Now, in those days, the work-study program was sort of new and yet not so new. Not too many schools did it, but it's patterned after the Antioch plan. And Cincinnati had a plan like that. And it created a great fascination for a school like ours here in a municipal situation where a lot of students live at home and are going to go to school here and work. The theory was that you'd take a student, and the fall semester, let's say he'd work in industry, the spring semester he'd be on campus. If you could get a pair of students, you switch them. Well, it worked and it didn't work. Some of the students said, no, it's going to lengthen my education, so I'd rather have a part-time job. One of the real problems was in scheduling, because we weren't so big. We couldn't be sure the courses we offered in the fall were going to be offered in the spring, so he could take them.
Yes, you weren't offering everything all the time.
No, the flexibility wasn't there.
Yeah.
So that tended to defeat that a little bit. So after a while, the work-study part sort of faded out, and Jack Woods was in charge of placement and full-time placement, part-time placement, except for the college education. But you can see that that we had a concern which some schools don't have.
Yes.
You see?
I think one thing you've been saying nearly all the time we've been visiting as we were making this tape, John, I think it started when you came here, by what you implied at least, the strong relationship of people on campus that work so well together, and a growing, continuing bond between us and the In your case, of course, between the department and the College of Business and the business community.
Yes, well, we tried, Mr. Haynes, Dr. Haynes was always interested in, and Carl was too, in trying to develop a continual relationship. Now, a lot of people knew about us, but a lot of people didn't. But we were interested in getting the support of people in particular areas, like real estate.
Yes.
You see, that's an area. In retailing, that's a big area. And working a close relationship. And all for a while, Dr. Helmstetter did it, and then for a while I did it. We'd call up on the telephone maybe 8 or 10 men in business in different kinds of positions, accounting, management, office managers, whatnot, and invite them to lunch at a room down in the hotel someplace. And we say, of course, you have to pay for your own lunch, but we'd like to talk to you about the University of Omaha. Expense accounts weren't
A little bit small.
weren't known then. See, somebody said, well, you have to eat anyway.
Yes.
So, but we had some nice conversations with these businessmen, trying to find out what sort of a person they would be looking for in hiring, what kind of training, what kind of expertise, and so on and so forth. And, well, they'd always say reading, writing, arithmetic, and spelling, you know. Or remind me of a story about spelling. Can I tell a story?
Yes, you can.
This summer, I was in Colorado visiting.
Now we're back to 79.
Right now.
Yes.
And I met a man who used to teach for me years ago. Is now retired, and the reason he left me and went to Colorado was he just couldn't stand being away from Colorado any longer, see. And I said to him, well, I put it this way. I began asking him about a situation that happened. We used to have an extension division, correspondence courses, you know.
Yes.
And if you wanted to, if it was in your field, you could grade those papers and carry on. Well, he was teaching business law at the time, and he had a student that had been on campus. I knew him very well. Nice lad, got drafted, went in the Army, and he was over in Germany someplace, and he was taking this course in business law. And this professor had a phobia about just correcting spelling, correcting grammar, punctuation, this type of stuff. But it was a course in business law. Now, one time he got a note pinned to a lesson that was returned. Professor, it's a course in business law. Grade the law and leave the spelling and the grammar alone. And yes, I asked him, and yes, he remembered it, and he thought that was a lot of fun. Now, we enjoyed that chap very much. I don't know whether he ever finished his degree or not, but you know, you asked me whether people quit or went off on something else.
Yes.
It just comes to my mind a lad I met. Can I tell that story?
Sure.
A lad that I met out at the airport one time. I was going someplace, and he was there. It was kind of cold weather, and he had wearing a top coat and had one over his arm. I said, well, what do you do, two coats? Well, he says, I'm meeting a man on this plane. It was coming up from the south. He said he called and said he'd forgotten to bring a coat. It was cold. I said, well, what are you doing now? Did you ever finish your degree? I recalled that he had had a problem in a course in mathematics of finance with Jim Earle, I think, and hadn't quite finished yet. He said, no, he says, I might get back there someday and finish off that course. Well, I said, what are you doing now? Oh, he says, I'm meeting a man here. I got to show him some, to take him over here in Iowa to a place that I want to show him. I said, well, what are you doing, selling farm? Oh, he says, I'm buying and selling banks. You never can tell when success is going to come on a failure. You just don't know, see?
Well, over the year, Excuse me, did I
It's
interrupt you?
fine.
Something you were going to say
No,
there?
no, no. I was just going to comment about moving from a division to a
To a college.
college.
Yeah, we were into that, and we didn't quite get to
Yes,
it.
well,
Let's do that.
You know, you've got to wait till the time is right, and then you got to push. Really, you have to have reasons for it.
What made you think that the time was right in those early 50s?
Because we needed some room to expand, and I needed a little more dignity to hire faculty. Because I would have trouble trying to hire a good man here in a division if he could go someplace else or college and had college status.
Yes.
Because you're a step closer to what you mentioned in your introduction, accreditation.
Yes.
Now, in the academic world, accreditation is tremendously important, and students don't always realize that, neither do parents, but it's very important, and the educator should look after it for them. Well, it would be a step ahead, and but that meant I'd be giving up that dean of students job that you mentioned that I was looking after in kind of an interim, which I took for a short time and lasted 10 years.
It's a long interim, isn't it?
Yeah. So I talked to Dr. Bale about it, and I talked to him several times, and I talked to Carl, and Carl said, "Oh, you don't need it. We get along fine, you see." I said, "Sure, Carl, we're getting along fine, but we want to go from here." And
was he kind of reluctant to let you out of his college?
Oh, well, sure, I was taking care of things for him.
Yes.
He was a great fellow. I really enjoyed him. But this, I talked to Dr. Bale once, and he says, "Lucas, you better stay where you are." He says, "I got too many things in the fire." You know, he hadn't been here very long. He said, "I got too many things in the fire. The College of Education, they want to spring and to a college. And there's some things in journalism he had to get, whether it was hiring people or something. Anyway, he didn't say I couldn't, ever, but he said, let's wait. So I waited, and the next year we got it going. So after we got to college in '52, then I was beginning to do a little better job in recruiting faculty. I couldn't hire PhDs. There weren't enough of them to go around. The big schools, of course, always had a place for their graduates. You'll be surprised, but if an advisor has a good student, a good graduate, he's got some friend who would like to hire him, and it's easy. So you have to get into the swing of things. So I had some friends of mine invite me to attend the meetings of the American Association of Collegiate Schools of Business, which I could do, but I couldn't attend the business meeting. And after a while, they established a seminar at these meetings to instruct deans what they must do if they're going to get their college accredited. And that was very helpful. And Dr. Bale let me go to those meetings. And in the meantime, we were hiring some very fine people with master's degrees who were interested in working to a doctorate to be college professors. You see, all people who take degrees in business administration aren't interested in being professors. It's not like education. See? They don't have their goal quite that well set because business is very attractive. And even today, you know, you can make more money in business than you can teach school. But if you hate to go to work every day, you better change the job. You know, that's pretty important to remember. I used to tell my students that. If you're on a job and you hate to go to work, you don't want to get up in the morning and go to work, you better change before you get caught with a wife and a family and a bunch of kids and you can't afford to change. See?
You're
get yourself
locked
settled
in, so to speak.
Yeah, you don't want to get locked in. You want to have a certain amount of freedom because somehow or another that mighty dollar tends to lock you in.
Yes, indeed.
You know, I mentioned the cafeteria earlier.
Yes, you did.
Can I tell you a story?
Yes, the good old cafeteria.
The food was good. And remember the attitude of the administration, let's make it possible for these kids to go to school. So in the cafeteria, they kept milk at a nickel and soup, bowl of soup at a nickel for many, many years so these kids have something to eat. No kidding.
You could have lunch for a dime, practically.
Yeah. And I think maybe I told you this story one time. We used to be able to get a small minute steak about so big. You go in the cafeteria, tell them you'd like steak, and they'd cook it and bring it into the faculty club room, lunchroom for you, and you can enjoy it, all for 15 cents.
Bring it to your plate.
Oh, sure, sure. And when it got up to a quarter, the faculty couldn't afford it anymore. I use that when I want to measure how much have we lost in value of the dollar between way back then and today.
What a meal you could buy for $1. Huh?
Yeah, but I tell you, Paul, I thought it was a wonderful experience here in those early days, even when things were kind of tough.
You know, one of the things in those early days, and I want you to share it because you have shared it with me. In fact, we talked about homegrown tomatoes tasting so good.
All right. I was just getting ready to do that. When I mentioned
that you brought up.
I was hiring faculty who had master's degrees and motivated. Marsh Bull was one of those. And, of course, Dr. Mintier had been a student of mine years before. That's a little different story. But Marsh Bull, Jack Hill, those people.
Many people, as you're getting into, are still with us.
Yeah, he's still with us. And we work out so they could work here and work on their degrees in the summertime. And the thing that I appreciated from the president was that we could increase their salary as they proved up themselves professionally, don't you see, and in experience, without holding them as they get held in a graduate school if they're teaching at a level instructor, don't you see. We could promote them, and this is what helped us. The cooperation of, well, this time it had been Mabel L, was tremendous in helping me to build a faculty that today provides us with people like Jack Hill, Dr. Mintier, some others. There was another remark I made a moment ago, in addition, in connection with homegrown. Let's see. Now, Bill Brown was a student, and he took the retailing program. He went from here. He played football here, by the way.
Yes.
He went from here to Washington University with Ross Trump, a friend of mine down there, Dean, and took a master's degree. Interested in education, teaching, helping students. And then he went to Pittsburgh and got his doctorate. Well, I tried several times to get him to come back, almost gave up, because this is his home, his wife's home and all. And he was down in Texas, teaching down there at University of Texas. And I met him one time at a meeting, marketing meeting, and persuaded him to come back. So that's Dr. Mintier, as I said a moment ago. She went to a place in Massachusetts, taught a while, came back, and was my secretary for a while, and dean of students. And I thought, well, golly, this gal's got more on the ball than just being a secretary. I got her teaching part-time in the evening school for a little while, and she liked it. And I said, well, go get yourself a degree. So she went and got a master's degree in Indiana, and then later on, she went back and got her doctorate. And now she's probably about, what? She's the oldest gal in the service at the university. Because she was a student at the old school, you see. Oh. And she's been here a long time. She does a crackerjack job in an important subject matter area, which is most difficult for students to take because they just don't like it very well, you know. Learning how to write a letter, how to spell, how to get your point across on a piece of paper that someone will respond to, how to make an application, how to make reports. And she does a great job. She's well recognized. She's well recognized in her profession, too, when she goes to her professional meetings.
Well, now what you're saying is one of the reasons, really, you were able to build and grow this garden of fine faculty was because of the administrative help You were able to give them plums as you went along to keep them happy.
Sure, sure. They earned them. I mean, after all, they were a better teacher after they've had a few years, and they worked hard at it. Dr. Harrison, you mentioned a while ago, finally came to me, but he went to Indiana first, and I still kept persuading him to come over. You see, there was another thing that helped. When those boys were teaching here in a relatively small institution, they were involved in the planning of courses, they were involved in the curriculum, they were involved in administration. They had a voice.
It's like a smaller store. You get to do a little bit of everything, don't you?
I'll tell you, it was so much like a small college that you just, you know, we called it the University of Omaha, but it had a lot of the good characteristics of a small university. And in those early years, we needed to do a lot of advising of students. It seemed to be customary, but also a student didn't have any idea whether you're going to offer a course next semester or not. It might have been in the catalog, but you might not have anybody to offer it, but your advisors would know.
You had to advise almost 2 or 3 years ahead, didn't you?
You had to plan ahead.
Yeah.
You had to plan ahead. But to serve the student, don't you know? But this college, then from 52, maybe till getting along towards 60, around, you know, about 8 years in there, we kept building. And of course, these people were all aware of the American Association of Collegiate Schools of Business as a capstone. If they wanted to look for another job, it would be to their advantage if they could say, yeah, I was at the University of Omaha, that's an accredited institution.
Yes.
Now, we were accredited by the general accreditation.
Yeah, North Central.
North Central. No problem on that.
Yes.
And we had no trouble in getting students into other graduate schools. But about that time, Jack Hill and Harris and some of these people who were Willis Rokes and Carl, the people who had been around a while and knew where we were going. Well, we better get ready and make sure we're going to give a try for this thing, because it wasn't easy. I mean, it normally isn't easy. Some schools try 3 or 4 times. But I'd been to enough sessions to know about what was expected, and so we began to more diligently get our faculty built, and these people were beginning to finish off their degrees, you understand? So that it took a lot of doing, and then as we got close to about 63
or 64 in there,
60, well, about 63. We had to circularize all our graduates for the last 5 years, the last 3 years, to find out 2 things. Who went, or how many went to which graduate schools for advanced work, and where. So we had a list of graduate schools where they'd gone for master's degrees, doctoral degrees, and so forth. And then 3 years, the last 3 years. And we got pretty good response from our graduates, and they told us where they were. And then also, another question, let's see. We had serviced by that time about 700 graduates. Just about, maybe 65 or 75, 80, but just about that. And we had a lot of people out, not only in Omaha, but other places. And they had been to, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, and of course Nebraska, Harvard, and places of that kind, taking graduate work, and there are quite a few of them. Then the other category of questions, those who were working in what kind of jobs. And most of them were in professional, semi-professional, managerial.
That's impressive.
Oh, yeah.
In relation to your program.
We got better than a 50% response on that.
Great.
Well, then Jack Hill and some of the other faculty helped put together I suppose, petition. It's all of the data. It's about that thick. And on every faculty member, on the policy of the university, everything. You see, they're very, very strict, and I didn't know how strict until after I got in and was a member of an inspection committee.
So you'd been through this from the other side.
Yeah, I didn't know how strict.
Yeah.
How strict. Yeah, you could get turned down if you said things in your catalog you were not doing.
So
if you said your graduate, if you said your students had to have such and such to graduate, and you know how they found out? We go into the registrar's office, look at all the records. Now, I don't know whether they can do that now or not. There's some strings on all this stuff, but they check it out pretty thoroughly because, after all, they don't want something to happen. But we got that report ready and turned it in the fall of '64. In the early spring, well, it must have been late winter, about maybe February somewhere, we had a visitation committee. And they went over everything. They checked all our records, and they talked to all the faculty, and they talked to people in the other colleges, and they're pretty thorough. Paul Green from Illinois was one of the boys who checked, and a good friend of mine who was then dean at Iowa was here, somebody else. But I didn't know. I had an idea. They talked to the president, and they're concerned about faculty qualifications, your graduates, your facilities, your equipment, your budget. How would we compare? And we were a very strong municipal institution. Oh, really, one of the best. And also one of the last.
Yes, indeed we were.
You know that.
And as you're doing this now, telling about it, we're coming toward the end of our time as a municipal school, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We just get towards the end. But the meetings that year, the association were in New York, and I appeared for the meeting, about 25, 30 people, all friends of mine, all other deans that I'd known for several years. And they asked some pointed questions. They even pointed out some errors in my report. You know.
They really fine-tooth combed it, huh?
Yeah. But the visiting committee, they also knew about them. I mean, they saw them. They weren't serious, but in spite of all the proofing you read, Paul, you just don't always come out right.
There's always something wrong, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, by the end of the session, or by the time, they said it was all right.
That was really quite a plum, wasn't it? A source of real satisfaction to you, John?
That was terrific. I got on the telephone, I called back and told everybody. And I told Milo. Of course, he wasn't president then.
No, he had retired now.
But he had helped us a great deal.
Yes.
He was so closely associated with North Central and all the other accrediting agencies for education and all the rest, that he knew the value of it and the reputation of the institution. So he helped us. He helped us. One important thing that he did, you see, you could not become a member if your faculty people taught more than 12 hours. At that time, they were teaching 15.
Uh-huh.
So when it looked like we might be able to make it, why, he said, if you're going to work it out so students don't get shortchanged any, okay, he cut down to 12.
That was quite a change.
And then by the next year, they got the rest of the institution down to 12. Oh, that was a tremendous change. Yeah, very much. So we're up and we got our accreditation, and this is 1965, and delighted. And in the background, my faculty, of course, were all waiting to spring because people like Jack Hill in management, Marsh Bull in marketing, and all the rest of them It had so many students, so many people who are working in Omaha. When are you going to get a master's degree? See? Well, I held off because we just had, you have to have your undergraduate program accredited first.
Yes.
And my friends, of course, knew what we had in mind. We wanted to get into a master's program, but we were warned in a friendly way, don't rob your undergraduate faculty for a graduate program. If you do, you'll have some trouble. But we started slowly, 1 course, 2 courses, something like that. And we got it going. And let's see now. About 1968 or thereabouts, we had a first, we started with 60, mind you, in this master's program, this backlog whole thing.
Is that right?
By 1960, it must have been close to double, 68. But it was around 68, 69, that we graduated our first MBAs. Let's see, you want to know their names? I'll see if I can remember.
Maybe you can remember.
J.D. Clemmer was one, and I believe Don Cott was the other one.
Is that right?
We had 2, yeah. And since that, I don't know how many
Yeah.
they've turned out. And of course, the program has changed a great deal. And it has in all institutions, because the original MBA program started in some of the Big Ten schools, was what I would call a miniature PhD program. You know, 4 fields, including economics. But now they put some different titles on, like executive administration or something of that kind, and get a little different slant for it. But it's still a tremendous program.
Are the basics much the same as they were?
Yes, yes. And the quality is good. They still have to hit economics pretty heavy, finance, marketing. They got to touch base on the areas, but they may have a little more concentration in some things than in other things. So that brought us up quite a long ways to 1965, 68.
We moved a long ways. We have about 3 minutes left. We're getting close to the end of your time as a dean now, aren't we? But you kept working after that. I wanted to point that out.
All right. Paul, several years before, when we became faced with people retiring, because some were pretty hale and hearty
Yes.
at 70 and some weren't, or thereabout. And the deans or the president with administrative group, we agreed, it wasn't anybody too close, but we agreed that you must give up your administrative duties the year in which you become 65.
Uh-huh.
So I became 65 in 1969,
Yes.
didn't I? I was born in 1904, is that right?
That's pretty close, I think.
And I finished that year and gave up that. But then we had agreed, if a man was hale and hearty and so on, and he was needed. I mean, you had to be needed. Why, he could teach with a year renewal until he was 70. So in 1974, when I became 70, I finished in June. Say, incidentally, when Roland Haynes, Dr. Haynes retired, guess who he taught for?
You're one of your faculty?
Yeah, teaching in the evening program. He was a marvelous teacher.
Yeah.
Those adults just loved him.
Well, now you've had so many great years, and now you've had a few years of retirement to reflect on the many happy things that you had. What,
you know,
what do you miss the most, John?
What do I miss the most?
Yes.
Well, that's pretty obvious, Paul. I miss my secretary and I miss my parking place. Wouldn't you think that's what it would be?
Oh, it could have been a variety of things. Those are important, weren't they?
Well,
are you enjoying retirement?
I enjoy it very much, and of course I see a lot of my friends
Yes.
from time to
You live
time.
close to the campus?
Not very far away.
Yes.
And, Ms. Lucas and I spend more time out in Colorado in the summer than we used to. We haven't done too much other traveling. It's kind of hard to get around. My family lives here, my daughter.
So that's why you're
I had one daughter, and she has 4 children. And I like to go watch my youngest grandson, who's 12, play hockey. He plays on this junior hockey.
Oh, great. Yeah, we thank you so much for being with us.
Could I say one thing more?
I think we have maybe a quick time for it.
The thing that I noticed, that we were always striving for excellence, to do the best we could with the facilities we had at our disposal, and that's money or people or what. And I was pleased to hear the Chancellor say the other day that what he's striving and hopes his faculty does is for excellence. And that's good, but it's always within the framework of the facilities and the talent you have available. You can't do any more than that to do the best you can.
And that's a great note on which to end. Thanks, John Lucas, for being our guest, our first Dean of Business here at the university.
Well, thank you, Paul.